The reason why I'm in white is because it is Trinity Sunday. And I tried to wonder what that means when we're also thinking about Juneteenth. And I may have spoken about it before, but there's a very famous icon, which is a religious painting where people pray all through while they're making it. And it was painted by Rublev, and it's got a picture of what looks like three angels. And it reminds you of the three angels that visited Abraham. But it's also a Trinity that has been considered also an icon of the Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. And if you look closely at that icon, there's a little rectangular picture on the side of the table. And what we believe was originally there on that painting was a tiny little mirror. Because the Holy Trinity, God, who is the mystery, I am not going to stand here and explain it, Jenna, because it is a mystery. It's meant to be a mystery. God is inviting us to the table. That's why we can see ourselves in that little tiny mirror. And that's why when we celebrate communion, everybody's welcome. And boy, if we had just really believed that, we never would have treated our brothers and sisters who were African and forced them away from their families, forced them to come here and work until they dropped. The world would have been a much better place. We were not listening to the gospel as white people. And so I think it's a good idea that we continually ask the Lord for our forgiveness, for our small-mindedness, for the sins of the past and possibly the sins of the future if we show that kind of bigotry and, small-mindedness, again, to any people. And so that it is very important to celebrate the fact that God is welcoming to all people, regardless of who they are, what their color is, what nation they came from. Jesus said, whatever you do to the least of these, you do it to me. We've been pretty abusive to Jesus in our history. And so I hope that the future will be a better reflection of people who say they follow Jesus Christ. And with that, I'm going to give you our guest speaker, Maggie Glover, Senator Maggie Glover, and we welcome her with open arms. Got a mic right here.
She had silver gray hair, and it was always so very neatly combed in place. There were 4 generations of just sheer love in her face. Now, I was a child about 4 or 5, and all day long I would ask questions. Never once did she ever tell me no. I'd ask, where does God live, and why won't he talk to me? Why we so poor? That's what I want to know. Will I ever find love? Won't you answer these questions for me before you fall off to sleep? Looking asleep, that lady stretched, yawned, and started to speak. And what she told me that evening would hold me together inside forever. She said, child, all the things you ask, you'll know someday, but you got to learn to live, baby, in a more patient way. 'Cause you see, baby, by faith, God put us here. And by faith, there be's better days. And you can get to your better days if you just learn to make it through the night. You hear me, child? Come what may, you just keep holding on to God's unchanging hand, and you will get to your better days. Now, at the turn of spring, heaven sent down angels and indeed gave Grandma her wings. And now that she is sliding and gliding in heaven, and even though I'm all grown up now, every time darkness gets in my way, I still hear that lady say, child, all the things you ask, you'll know someday. But you've got to learn to live in a more patient way. You've got to make it through the dark. You've got to just keep holding on to God's unchanging hands, and you will, baby, get to your better days. Good morning. That's a song I learned many, many years ago, riding around in my car. It's done by an African American contemporary singer named Dinah Reeves. I shared it with you this morning because for such a time as this, it's the word that all people need to hear, need to obey. We must stand together so that together we can all get to our better days. It cannot be done individually. Can't be done by a little group over here and a little group over there. No. God created us, all of us, his children, and he requires that we be faithful and believe in him. And if we do that together, we can have heaven here on earth and learn to love and enjoy one another. Pastor Eunice, and to the members of St. Catherine's, I thank you for the opportunity to come and share with you today. For this church and for all that I have heard and found to be very true about you is the fact that you are already practicing what the rest of the world needs to be doing. I commend you. I thank God for you, for this indeed is the way it ought to be. It is what Christ, our Creator, expects of us. Thank you. Juneteenth. And again, thank you, Pastor Eunice, for your decorations. It means a lot. And your members told me that quite recently this church practiced and did services for pride. And again, you're one of the precious few, and that's commendable. I'm told that you decorated for that too. And you can always tell Maggie's house on Sumter Street because these are the colors at my residence. I thank you. Now, Juneteenth, short for June the 19th, marks the day when the federal troops arrived in Galveston, Texas, 1865, to take control of the state and ensure that all enslaved people could be freed. Captain Granger, with about 2,000 troops, marched into Galveston 2.5 years after the emancipation. The slave masters and owners in the state of Texas knew that the Emancipation Proclamation had been signed and enacted in 1863, but they were one of the border slave states. And knowing full well that the slaves from Africa did not speak the language, they were unfamiliar with the customs of America. And so while some of them had heard rumblings, because no one in charge ever said anything, the farmers and slave owners in Galveston continued their free labor of these Africans. About 250,000 of them continue to harvest and provide free labor throughout the Civil War for these farmers in Texas. It was also the June the 19th when General Granger and these 2,000 mixed troops, those black soldiers that had been allowed by the president, Abraham Lincoln, to join the troops for the Union. They came and read to the people in Galveston the proclamation that said they were free. It was a glorious celebration, and it occurred on June the 19th, and that became the Juneteenth and the first Juneteenth celebration. Now, as Texans moved across the country, and of those 250,000 slaves that were freed that day, the Juneteenth celebration moved with them throughout the country. And for many years, states enacted the Juneteenth celebration as one of the state holidays. It would take until 2021 when President Joe Biden signed the bill that Congress had finally passed for Juneteenth to become a federal holiday. And so this coming 19th, we will, for the fourth year in 25, and as always, it falls on June the 19th, 2025 will be the fourth year. Now remember, this started in 1865, but it would take until 21 for it to become a federal holiday. During the Civil War, to make it a little personal for us, I need you to know that when President Lincoln became president, and he, being a Christian, believed that slavery was wrong and that something needed to be done about that. But 11 states considered what he said, and unfortunately, South Carolina, our beloved state, was the first to succeed from the Union because they wanted and needed free labor. We are an agricultural state, was then, we still are. And the free labor of these slaves, many of which came through the port of Charleston and were distributed throughout the southern states. South Carolina led the way, and the Civil War was started right here when the Confederate soldiers fired on Fort Sumter. If we individually and collectively, if we don't tell the story, if we don't, as your pastor has suggested to us this morning, we must individually help this nation to move forward, to come out of the darkness. And if you just think about what is going on in America right now, just think yesterday in Minnesota, a man dressed as a police officer went to the representatives house, and she happened to be a Democrat and one of the key people on Governor Walz's campaign for vice president. So her history is what brought this man to her home, knocked on the door, and when she answered, shot and killed along with her husband in their home on a day when we are celebrating the 225th anniversary of armed services, the military in this country. But the backdraft of this, it was also the birthday, the 79th birthday of our president, who is wanted to have this kind of parade ever since he saw it in China with another strongman dictator. And so we were told in December the 4th, 1957, in a speech by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., it may well be the greatest tragedy of this period of social transition, if not hearing the glaring noisiness of bad people. That's not our problem. Our problem is the appalling silence of good people. That's what Dr. King told us in 57. In Isaiah 58:1, God told us, cry aloud, spare not, lift up your voice like a trumpet. Think about a trumpet. We not whispering. Cry out aloud and show my people their transitions, their transgressions. Ladies and gentlemen, this June 19th, as we all celebrate Juneteenth, I am going to remind you of what God has commanded of us. We cannot sit looking at our own family, looking at TV, listening to the radio, and say, oh Lord, these people are going to do what they want to do anyhow. Well, and in the Black community, ain't nothing we can do about it. These are our dark days. And we have got to trust and believe in a God who told us no weapon formed against you. It will perish, because I, your God, your Father, your Creator, will forever love and keep you safe until he comes to carry you home. St. Catherine's, trust and believe in this God, who also told us, I am a jealous God. And no matter how much they call you, they employ that you should agree with them, you must know that he, omnipresent, omnipotent God, is the only one that if we keep holding on to his unchanging hand, ladies and gentlemen, we can make it through the night. We can get to our better days.